During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about cover crops, but from a different angle. We're going to talk about how to kill cover crops. Now, the reason why we want to terminate or kill cover crops in the fall, it could be varied, but like for us, we really worry when we're in such a dry area of the United States that those cover crops are going to take moisture away from next year's crop. So that's the reason we're talking about this.
Well, it can be tricky though, Brian. If you want to do a termination of a cover crop in the fall, you've also got to deal with cold weather where herbicides don't work as well, and you've got to deal with frost. Not just cold weather, but if you have a hard killing frost, it can be really tough to get the herbicide into the plant.
Yeah, now right away you might think, oh, wait a second, you guys have cold weather, that frost is going to kill the plant. Yes, if we're doing oats or something as a cover crop, then that's great, and the frost does our work for us. But there are a lot of cover crops that many farmers are using that actually can survive the winter fairly well, so the frost simply isn't going to do it.
So the question is, at what time do you try to do this? It's really going to vary depending on you and your judgment, but if you're just getting started into cover crop, we would highly recommend that you do some different things out on your farm. So you may do some strips of different cover crops, and you may try some different timings of exactly when you want to terminate that cover crop to learn what works best in your rotation.
Yeah, but the problem is always this. No one knows what next year is going to bring for weather. Next year could be the wettest year ever. It could also be the driest year ever. Well, then it's really going to make a lot of difference on when you terminate that cover crop. But again, the reason why we're talking about this is, personally for me, I just get so worried about the cover crop doing more harm than good that I'm willing to leave it out there for a while to help with erosion, maybe build the soil, things like that, but I just don't want it to have a negative impact on next year's crop.
One other thing that farmers may be looking at is their goal for growth out of that cover crop, and maybe you wanted to see 6 inches of growth or a foot of growth out of the cover crop, and that may influence your timing. If you think, well, I have to get to this stage, then it's going to serve the purpose I want, that could be just fine too, and that could be your gauge as to when you want to go out and do your termination.
Well, for a lot of farmers in wet areas, they really like letting that cover crop grow all through the winter, suck up some moisture early in the spring, actually seed right into the growing or living cover crop, and then terminate it, and that can certainly be done. Our only fear there is that the cover crop gets too big. If it's above about a foot or 18 inches tall, then we usually will say, hey, why don't you terminate it first, wait a week or two, and then seed your crop. But otherwise, if it's still nice and small in the spring and you seed right into it, everything works out just fine, and then you can terminate it after planting that crop.
And you could run into issues if you let it get big and you let it grow into the spring with bugs or with slugs and things like that that can hang out in that thick cover crop. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. There isn't just one right way for everybody. If you haven't been doing this in the past, talk to other people that are raising cover crops. Talk to them not only about the good things that happen, but also about the challenges and some of the equipment considerations of trying to get through big cover crop without doing tillage in the spring, and then make a determination for yourself when you need to terminate that cover crop in the fall.
Well, one of the reasons why a lot of people raise cover crops is to hold down weed pressure, like with our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop this tough weed coming up later in the show.